Anti-personnel landmines are simple yet effective tools that have been used in warfare for hundreds of years. The first recorded use of pressure-activated landmines was by the Confederates in 1862 during the Civil War. What was then thought to be murderous and barbarous by Union soldiers became a standard military item and was ubiquitous in the 20th century warfare. Now, at the risk of sounding like a downer, this is a video about weapons in warfare, so don't be surprised. Landmines, while simple and effective, are utterly brutal and they're indiscriminate. Our mission at Task and Purpose has always been to bring you ground-level, unbiased views on these types of issues. One of the ways we're able to do that is thanks to our team's subscription to Ground News. Ground News is a website and an app that gathers news from all over the world and puts it into one place. It gives me a clear way to navigate how every story is being told from different perspectives. For instance, like on Finland, one of NATO's newest members announcing plans to withdraw from the global treaty that bans anti-personnel landmines. There was a ton of information to sort through. Thanks to Ground News, I can quickly cut to the heart of the story, and out of 100+ sources covering the story, Ground News breaks down which sources cover issues on a more left, more right, or centrist view. And depending on where you look, Finland's move is either a strategic response to Russian aggression or a dangerous roadblock to international protections for civilians. But Ground News also helps sort by political bias and location and even highlights government affiliation. It lets me choose stories with a high factuality, but my favorite part is their interactive map feature that lets me explore news from all over the world. We're offering 40% off their Vantage plan at groundnews.com/task. This is a great discount on their best plan exclusive to you, Task and Purpose viewers, so I really recommend you give Ground News a shot by clicking on the link in the description or pinned comment below. Anti-personnel landmines disproportionately harm civilians, according to the civil society initiative called the Landmine and Cluster Munition Monitor, with the group reporting that 84% of recorded casualties from landmines were civilians. Considering the risk of collateral damage and civilian casualties, as the Cold War ended, many countries felt that landmines were no longer needed, and they have largely fallen out of favor with modern militaries. This is evidenced by the Ottawa Treaty from 1997, which prohibits the use, stockpiling, production, and transfer of anti-personnel landmines. This treaty has been proven rather effective, as now there are only 11 countries that are thought to be capable of producing them. For example, Italy once used to be one of the top producers of anti-personnel landmines, and after this treaty, the company producing most of them was bought out and was converted to help build cars. Ain't it just like an international peace treaty to take your job? The treaty has been signed by 163 countries, with some notable exceptions being the United States, Russia, China, and North and South Korea. While the United States and Russia are not part of the Ottawa Treaty, they both used to adhere to the amended Protocol 2 of the Convention of Conventional Weapons. And to the person who named that, who hurt you? Essentially, these are rules on the use of landmines, booby traps, and other explosive devices. Things like making minefields, using self-destructing mines when not marked, and making them out of enough metal so they could be found in mine-clearing operations. Now, I have to emphasize they used to adhere to amended Protocol 2, as Russia has thousands of non-conforming anti-personnel landmines, booby-trapped civilian items, and have mined outside of combat zones, just to name a few examples. With this complete disregard for the rules about the use of anti-personnel landmines in Ukraine and rising tensions throughout the world, landmines are once again coming back to relevance for military strategy, and countries are leaving the Ottawa Treaty. With this in mind, let's step into the topic and discuss the rise of landmines in the world and how and why they will likely become part of modern warfare. Before we get any further into the doom and gloom, landmines really were fading in relevancy after the Cold War because of the decline in near-peer conflicts, i.e. NATO versus the Warsaw Pact, and the stigma surrounding these mines. With the imminent threat of World War III gone at the end of the Cold War, countries began to move away from pressure-activated landmines. Pressure-activated is the key phrase because command-operated mines like claymores are still fair game. The United States and Russia, who did not sign the Ottawa Treaty, took steps to remove millions of mines from their stockpile. The United States said in 2002 that they had a stockpile of 10.4 million, which had been reduced to just over 3 million anti-personnel mines in 2014, according to Human Rights Watch. While the United States didn't get rid of them all, the ones they have kept are quite old. The last time the United States produced a landmine was in 1997, and Matchbox 20 was at the top of the charts. They made 450,000 area denial artillery munitions and 13,200 airdrop CBU-89 Bravo Gator self-destructing, self-deactivating anti-personnel mines. Both types of mines will become inoperative after a period of time. The last time the military purchased non-persistent mines was in 1990 with nearly 80,000 M16A1 anti-personnel mines. So it appears that the United States is stockpiling for a just-in-case scenario. Like when I used to buy a case of Frito-Lay's jalapeno nacho cheese dip from the mobile shop at Camp Arifjan in Kuwait to take back with me to Iraq just in case. Now, Frito-Lay's isn't paying us for that, but if they want to, call. After the Cold War era, even Russia drastically reduced the number of landmines they possessed. In 2004, they had 26.5 million anti-personnel landmines, and by 2010, they destroyed 10 million. While these numbers are a decade old and Russia is now making new landmines, at the time, two of the largest militaries in the world made an effort to dwindle their stockpiles. But that changed with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The use of anti-personnel landmines in Ukraine goes back to the war in Donbass that was from 2014 until the full-scale Russian invasion in 2022. During this time period, their use was relatively sporadic. They were mainly used by pro-Russian separatists with no evidence suggesting Ukraine used them. According to the United Nations, from 2014 to 2021, there were an estimated 1,242 mine-related civilian casualties in Ukraine. This number was surpassed following the full-scale invasion of the Ukraine, as there have been 1,379 civilian victims from February 2022 to December of 2024. When it comes to landmines, there are two types: anti-personnel and anti-tank. Anti-tank mines are not covered by the Ottawa Treaty and don't face the same restrictions on use. In the Russia-Ukraine war, both sides are using the same mines thanks to millions they had in storage from the Soviet Union. For the anti-tank role, the TM-62 is being used the most. It's a simple design that holds 17 pounds of explosives and is quite effective at taking tanks out of the battle. Besides turning tanks into scrap, it's been used in various MacGyver-like ways by both sides in a show of battlefield ingenuity. One example is its use as a makeshift satchel charge. This is done by replacing the tank fuse with a rope fuse or a grenade fuse. It can be used to clear buildings and trench lines, and hopefully they don't trip. It's commonly been used as a drone bomb airdropped on soldiers and vehicles. It's even been used on ground drones to perform kamikaze attacks. These cases have gone far beyond the mine's intended role and show how a simple Soviet-era anti-tank mine is being adapted for modern warfare. The dedicated anti-personnel mine of choice in the Russia-Ukraine war is also Soviet in design as the PFM-1. It's essentially a reverse-engineered Blue 43 Dragon Tooth, which was used by the United States during the Vietnam War. It's got many nicknames, like the Green Parrot or Leaf Mine, not only because of its color and its appearance, but also its primary delivery method. Also, as nicknames go, those kind of suck. What about Goblin Teeth or the Spicy Chili Verde, because it's green and it blows up. Like me after I have some good pork chili verde. And now I'm hungry. This mine is designed to be delivered through the air by canisters, rockets, cluster bombs, by helicopters, launching systems, a well-gripped, unladen swallow with a significant airspeed velocity. That last one is a Monty Python reference, just in case you missed it. Once they're released in the air, they glide down to Earth and are armed after they've reached their destination. It's less than 5 inches long, but holds 37 grams of explosives, and it's designed to maim. And that sentence is the worst pickup line ever. Hey baby. It's only 5 inches long, but it's dynamite and designed to maim. That's super creepy. These mines are extremely sensitive, with the Imperial War Museum stating as little as 5 kilos of force, around 11 pounds, is required to set them off. So, like your mom, double fisting a couple long necks.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got them.
There are two models of this mine being used. The older model will supposedly never shut off, while the newer model will do so after 40 hours. The problem is that this feature is extremely unreliable, like your college roommate, with reports of them going off weeks after their dispersal, and there's no way of knowing if this version is even being widely used, so who knows which are still active. And this poses a huge risk for civilians. While the PFM-1 is the most ubiquitous, it's only one of 13 different landmines being used by Russia, with the newest being the POM-3 from 2021. Like the PF-1, it's air distributed, but relies on seismic sensors and has a lethal range of 52 feet with an auto shutoff timer of 8 to 24 hours, depending on the settings. This new mine is a far cry from the PF-1. Russia's not alone in their use of the PF-1, as Ukraine has also used their own and are currently sitting on a stockpile of around 6 million. Ukraine is not allowed to either use or stockpile anti-personnel landmines as they joined the Ottawa Treaty in 2005, so in this regard, they're breaking the treaty. However, there's some nuance here, given that Ukraine's defense minister Yevgeny Kivshik said they're unable to destroy the mines they do have, as they're stored in areas that they can't reach, either because those facilities are under constant threat of attack by Russian forces, or the facilities are in Russian-occupied territory. Additionally, Ukraine's use of anti-personnel landmines has been somewhat limited. In 2021, the Human Rights Watch documented Ukrainian forces using rocket-launched PFM-1 mines into the city of Izium when it was occupied by Russian forces. Izium is in the Kharkiv Oblast, which was the scene of heavy battles in 2022, which was eventually retaken by Ukrainian forces in the same year. After that battle, the next time Ukrainian forces made headlines for using landmines was when the United States sent non-persistent anti-personnel landmines to Ukraine in November of 2024. This may have done because it was unknown at the time if President Donald Trump's administration would send support to Ukraine or how Russia would change tactics. In the beginning of the war, there were massed armor assaults that tried to overwhelm Ukraine. Now, after 3 years of sustained war, Russia has suffered serious losses to vehicles and armor, and that may explain why Russia has been deploying larger numbers of infantry at the front of armor. This may seem counterproductive, as you typically don't want to send troops to needlessly die, but Russia has taken to this strategy time and time again. This could prompt Ukraine to begin using anti-personnel mines to slow Russian advances, though there haven't been any reports of Ukraine using American anti-personnel mines. These examples would go against the Ottawa Treaty, and it would be telling if or when they choose to break it. This prolific use of anti-personnel landmines in Ukraine has caused an entire shift in how some European countries view the use of landmines. Currently, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Finland are taking the steps necessary to leave the Ottawa Treaty. Now, what do all these countries have in common? They all share a border with Russia. It's like everyone in the neighborhood sharing a fence with that one family who don't know how to act right. You know who they are. And if you don't, you're that family. Finland easily has it the worst, as the border with Russia is the largest at approximately 830 miles long. This border is far too large to guard with manpower alone, as they only have a projected wartime strength of 280,000, which is less than the estimated 700,000 military casualties Russia has suffered so far. Think about that for a minute. Russia has already lost almost twice the number of troops Finland can even muster, and Russia is still fighting. For the Baltic countries, this is even more unbalanced, as their militaries are even smaller. Poland, at least, fares better with the third largest army in NATO, but still the numbers Russia can put out are staggering. What's even worse are the geographic weaknesses that they have against Russia. For example, the Baltic countries are relatively flat, which makes them well suited to Russian armored advances. One way to combat this is to build minefields, and if Russia fields similar tactics against the Baltics as they have done with Ukraine, well, we could see widespread use of anti-personnel mines. By funneling Russian forces where they want them to go, these numerically inferior armies would be able to put up a better fight. Poland, on the other hand, has its own issues as it borders Belarus, which is a key Russian ally. The Russian exclave of Kaliningrad and the vitally important Suwalki Gap, which connects them to Lithuania. This gap stretches from Kaliningrad to Belarus and is 60 miles wide. If Russian forces were to cross this gap in a blitz, they could cut off the Baltic countries from Poland and the rest of Europe. Of course, one of the best defensive options to slow down a Russian advance would be to heavily mine the gap. It would slow down an advancing force and could give Poland and Lithuania precious time to secure a front line and ensure the Baltic region does not get cut off. These European nations have watched this war for years, and they're thinking about how they could best prepare themselves in case of another invasion. And anti-personnel landmines provide a cheap and effective way to do so. While they have all taken steps to leave the Ottawa Treaty, the biggest problem is that they don't have any anti-personnel mines. In fact, nobody in NATO besides the United States has a stockpile, and none of those countries are currently producing them. This could pose a problem, as the United States may decide it can't afford to supply Europe with their own if the US deems Ukraine to be a higher priority. Across the Baltic countries, defensive lines are being established along borders with Russia. Anti-tank obstacles, reinforced bunkers, and defense strongpoints are being worked on, and proposed options regarding anti-personnel landmines will likely be announced in the future. Poland is looking at domestically producing their own at the moment. Polish Deputy Defense Minister Paul Bejda said, "We want these mines to be produced in Poland. We have such capabilities. The issue at hand is to increase such capabilities, and we treat equally the private defense industry and the state-owned one." In Finland, the company Insta is already gearing up to produce landmines for the Finnish military. To be clear, this isn't the social media company Instagram, and I'm required to tell you that taking a selfie with a landmine is stupid and ill-advised. Currently, Insta has deployed a drone carrying a Claymore-esque mine that's been used in Ukraine and is currently developing a remote-controlled bounding mine, so it's feasible they could produce a traditional landmine. This, of course, would take years to develop, as it's indicative of the overall attitude Europe has towards defense. They're starting to spend more than ever and looking towards domestic options. Landmines are just a small piece of the bigger picture when you start examining European defense strategies. While all the attention and news about anti-personnel landmines has been in Europe, they have also been a part of South and North Korea since the Korean War. Both countries are stockpiling landmines and are thought to have the capability of producing new ones. Currently, the most notable minefield on the Korean peninsula is at the Demilitarized Zone, the DMZ. While the total number of landmines is unknown, it's estimated to be in the 2 million plus range, with mines scattered by both sides. Neither side knows exactly how many or even where all the mines are, and the number of mines is likely to grow as North Korea planted tens of thousands of mines last year alone. This doesn't even take into account the number of legacy landmines from the Korean War that are still considered a threat. In 2023, a South Korean man stepped on one in Paju City, which is 7 miles away from the DMZ. Mining their border with South Korea is as much for defense as it is to prevent their people from crossing over. North Korea mines their border with China as well, largely to prevent defections. In October 2023, it was reported that numerous people stepped on anti-personnel mines when trying to cross the Tumen River near the city of Musan to escape to China. It even got to the point that China told those people next to the river not to go near it because of the possibility of stepping on mines that had moved over. This just serves to show how indiscriminate these devices are. By now, it should be clear that anti-personnel landmines have always been present in the modern world one way or another, and with increased tensions in Ukraine and elsewhere, it's likely that they'll become even more common. Europe in particular is rethinking its relationship with landmines, as the Danish Defense Intelligence Service recently stated Russia could invade Europe in 5 years if NATO looks weak. They're cheap, they're effective, and when faced with a numerically superior enemy like Russia, it is one of the best options available. Although the use of anti-personnel landmines comes at a price, as Ukraine is now the most dangerous place in the world for unexploded weapons, according to the UN. And all of those mines and UXO would take at least 3 decades to clear. Even with the long threat that anti-personnel landmines present to civilians, more countries are likely to adopt them again, and landmines have become a part of their military strategy. The only thing you've got to do is watch your step, or, just not use them. As always, thanks for watching. I'm your army comic trying to avoid those bombs. Tom Tran, signing off.